I want to get my life back together. I want to give this season of my life some structure. I'm not sure where it's going to lead me to, but I know for sure I am deserving. I am deserving of a clean space.
Don't compare your grief to any other person. And it's hard to do because you may have just lost someone today. You may have lost someone yesterday, the previous week, or you may lose someone tomorrow. And you can look at other people who are going through grief right now and understanding, well, why can't I be like that? Well, really, there's a couple things. Number one is you're not them and you're not in their grief. So you can't compare yourself to them. They may have been working and they may have been trying to put in all that work to be where you feel that they're at. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to have bad times. It doesn't mean that they what you see right now with them, maybe that's not how they're at home. They may put on their best face when they're out, but when they go home, they're crying because they miss that person that much. Comparing each other's grief doesn't help us. But what we can do is we can talk with each other. We can figure out the best ways that helps us, and we can also figure out ways in which we can help others. We can say, maybe that worked for me, but that may not work for you, because grieving is different for each and every single person. But the more that we help each other, the more that we talk about it, the more that others can see what works for them. Because in the end, that's all what we're trying to do, right? We're all just trying to heal.
Grief can be something on your mind always. And it's not just when you're going about your daily life or when you're going about your daily routine. It's when you're sitting at home at night. Or you're enjoying time with friends and suddenly it hits you that they're not there anymore. Grief is that thing that follows you for a lifetime and waits for you at every single step of the way. And it's not that you're going to experience grief once, and it's not that you're going to experience grief twice. You may end up experiencing grief a whole lot of times, and it will wait there because the one thing that grief has that we don't is time. It looks at us, it waits for us, and it mocks us, and there's nothing that we can do about it. And the only thing that we can do is to go through it again and again, to not lose the love that we had, to not lose ourselves in the process. And by doing so, we go through grief. Intensity and shock of grief lessens over time. And what I mean by that is that the initial shock of hearing that someone that you love has died really takes away your breath, to the fact that you don't know how to react, you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, and for the most part, your brain is trying to comprehend what's happening. So like when my mom died and I found out, I cried. And then I cried on the way to the airport because I lived in another state. I cried to the point to where I fell asleep, woke up, cried, and then fell back asleep. And as time has gone on, as I've been able to process, as I've been able to integrate that loss into my life, it doesn't mean that I still don't cry. It just means that the initial shock and everything has lessened over time. I still think about her. I still love her. I still cry every year when I think about her at certain points of time. But that's where sometimes the difference comes in, is that the initial shock of just finding out lessens over time. So as you're experiencing grief and you're going through so much of it, you may find that that's the same with you. And if not, again, we all grieve differently. The point is that we're trying to figure out how to heal, how to cope, how to manage, how to process it. And if you're doing so in a healthy way, you're on the right track. Don't give up if you're someone that's grieving, because that's usually the thing that we want to do. Because when you're going through grief, you're learning some immense pain, and sometimes it feels immeasurable. And one of the things that we want to do is give up because we're tired of feeling. Because every time we feel, it's associated with those negative thoughts and feelings of losing someone, which is extremely valid. It means that the love that we have for that person is extremely deep. And it's remembering that decades and years of love isn't something that's easily extinguishable, nor is it easily something that's healed from, especially when we're in the initial stages of grief. Because when we're acknowledging the pain that we have when we're experiencing grief, it doesn't mean that we can't still experience other emotions. It doesn't mean that we can't experience happiness or joy. It's just that right now in this very moment as we're grieving, pain and the feelings of sadness And the things that are associated with it are really the overwhelming emotion that we have. And the thing about grief is you're going to experience all these emotions. You're going to experience sadness. You're going to experience joy. You're going to experience happiness. And you'll have those times that are great, but you're also going to experience some extremely low valleys, some extremely low times where you may not recognize yourself. And that comes with grief. And it's allowing yourself to understand, to process, to see where you're at, because you're probably not going to recognize yourself at times. And so when people ask you, well, why are you so sad? Or why can't you get over this grief? Years and decades of love aren't something that's gotten over within months. Because of the love that we experience was so deep, the healing that you're going through is probably going to be even deeper. I'm a glass half full type of person. And when it comes to grief, that's how it was for me too. And that's not how it is for everyone. Because for me, the statement that I'm about to make, not everyone agrees with. I was able to find some type of meaning and some type of happiness and lessons in the grief that I went through. Because while I do miss my mom and my brother, the countless friends and family that I've lost, I've become understanding, more compassionate, more loving, more understanding. But that doesn't mean that if you were to ask me, hey, would you give all that up to get them back? I would say, yeah. But that's not the case. So I deal with what I have. And it doesn't mean I wasn't loving or compassionate or understanding, but you understand it just a little bit more. And that's how it is for people with grief. Some people may resonate with what I say and like, yeah, I do have that type of meaning and, happiness and lessons in grief. And some people may say, no, that's not what I'm looking for. But there are people that have been going through grief for so long that that's the point. Trying to find a common understanding or common knowledge for people, that it makes it easier for you to be able to resonate. That makes it easier for you to be able to see those people and say, yeah, I agree with that. Let me talk with them a little bit more. Let me see what other videos they have or what other resources they have. Because the main point in grieving is not only trying to understand ourselves and trying to understand what we're going through, trying to find coping mechanisms and get through day-to-day life, but it's also to help each other. And when we can do that, that's a win for everyone. With grief comes isolation. And it doesn't mean that you basically kick away everyone. It can mean that no matter what you're going through, you just feel alone. Even when you're surrounded by the love of your family, the love of your friends, the people that have been there for you, you can still feel like nothing's going to change and that no one can understand that grief and no one can relate to it. And that's what makes you feel alone. That can make you feel isolated. But in the midst of all of that, it's important that if we do start feeling like that we do talk with our friends even more so, that we let them know how we're feeling. And if there's, if you feel isolated, or you don't feel like you have anyone to talk to, there's support groups, there's therapists that are online. There's a lot of resources and tools that we can have so we don't have to feel that way. Because one of the worst things about grief is the feeling of isolation that comes with that. And no one should have to feel alone while they're going through this.